It's getting ready right now. Hey, we're live. It's getting ready right now.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order for the Council of Governments. Do we have any public comments for this meeting tonight?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close the public comment section. We have an action to approve the March 4th, 2021 meetings. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the March 4th, 2021 meeting minutes.
We have a first from Mayor Kafusi.
I'll second it.
Okay, second from Mayor Child. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Our first business item is introduction of Congressman Owen.
Melanie, have they joined on yet?
Yes.
This is Holly. Okay. He should be joining just
Hi,
momentarily.
are you guys waiting for me by chance? Hi, guys.
Welcome.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? How's that?
Yep.
Well, hi, how's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Good, good. So, am I supposed to, am I supposed to be saying
Welcome,
something or am I waiting? Okay. Well, I guess let me just say this. First of all, I see some familiar faces here, and good seeing those guys who we've had a chance to meet already. And for those who haven't had a chance to meet, I'm really looking forward to that. I really am. I'm just going to take a few minutes, and I don't know if I'm supposed to take questions afterwards or not. But for those who've not heard my story, I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of, first of all, why I'm so excited to be a Utahn. And why I'm so excited to be at this position where I can represent the values that we all believe in, and making sure this is the greatest place for any family to come and live and grow and stay. For those who've not heard my story, I grew up in the Deep South in Tallahassee, Florida, 60s, KKK, Jim Crow, and segregation, and remarkably successful and a very proud community, a Black community across our country. Not only was very, very proud to be called Americans because our dads had come back from World War II, but very, very excited about proving themselves through meritocracy. We were of that belief, like every other culture out there, whether it be the Italians or the Jewish, or it didn't matter. We were not assimilating as we have done today, but we believe very simply that the only way you really get respect is by commanding it, and that's by winning. And that being said, the tenets that I grew up with, that I live with today, that makes it very easy for me to stay focused and committed and bold about my beliefs is very simply, we're taught to love God, country, family, and respect the women in authority. Very simple. And we had a dad in the house to make sure we understood that growing up and would not get off track with that idea. The thing that we also did, which is very similar to our culture here in Utah, is that we leaned in really hard toward our faith, our family, education, and the free market. And so within my community, and I didn't get a chance to experience knowing white Americans until I was 16 years old. So my entire upbringing was around Black Americans who taught us, number one, that this is a great country to live in, that you can overcome any obstacles. And if somebody tells you can't, that gives you the incentive to go out and prove them wrong. And so those tenets that I just mentioned is exactly what I found here in Utah. It's what had me make a decision when my kids started leaving high school in the late 1990s. I made a deal with every one of them. I said, you can look at any college across the country as long as you start your first year off in Utah. And that was because I wanted them to have a soft landing after they left home in Philadelphia. And because I'd gone to University of Miami, a party school was not a soft landing. So I wanted them to have a good experience. And it was a great decision on my part because they came out, they decided to stay. And about 8, 9 years ago, I realized they weren't coming home. So we decided to follow. So my goal very simply is in a sense to be a warning buoy to the rest of our country. Do not let the ideology that is against everything we believe in. The ideology that hates God, that hates capitalism, that hates the family. Do not let that rule and change our community here. Do not let that drive out this great culture that you guys have built literally, and your parents and your grandparents have built for generations. It's worth fighting for. And I'm just so thankful to be here to know what it looks like, and to make sure I stand very strongly in DC for it. So that being said, just know, and I know those of I've already talked to, you've heard this from me before, but I think it's important to know a little bit about our personality of my team, both here and in the district and out back in DC. The best way to explain that is two things. For those who read the book, the 5 Love Languages. First of all, for those who have not read it, it's a great book, and I read it years and years ago. But one of the languages that I found myself is the language of service. That's my love language. And what that basically means that I would do it, I love doing it 24/7. If I can find another hour to put in, I'll do that too. And the other side of it is that though I won a Super Bowl game with the Raiders, the 12 years prior to that were all losing seasons, all the way from high school to college, the 7 years with the Jets. So what I learned through that 12 years is that we cannot control the scoreboard. We can control the hustle. So we have a team here in the district and DC that loves to serve, and we love to hustle. So you're gonna see us all throughout the district. That's gonna be our legacy when it's all said and done, that there's no one who served their district more than this team that we're putting together. And with that being said, I wanna make sure that we get a chance to meet and talk and get an idea what your concerns are, and then take them back to DC and be a voice for that. So that's kind of a short introductory. I'm just thankful that we're on the field of action right now when we're trying to fight against the hard left. They're making a mess of things. They're moving so far, so fast to the left that American people, Democrats and Republicans and independents, are finally talking again the way we should. We might not agree on everything, but we all do agree that this is a country of freedom, and we're not going to stand by and let our rights be taken away by edict or by bullying. We're not going to let that happen. So we're going to have a good conversation, and we the people will come together. And in the next couple of years, the Republican Party will once again control the House in a big fashion. We're going to slow down this jerk to the left, and we're going to start putting ourselves back in place to get policies going to help us all, no matter what part of our district and our state that we're in. Okay, so that being said, any questions? I have a thing with Laura Ingram tonight, so I'm gonna have to take off in a few minutes to go get ready for that. But any questions at all, guys? Any comments?
No questions, just thank you for taking time to speak to us tonight. It was great to hear your story.
Thank
You know
you,
what
guys.
Goshen is? Ben used to call me every once in a while. I haven't heard from you yet.
Well, we're going to do that. We're going to make sure, and this is my pledge. And I grew up in a household with my dad, who's a college professor. We might not agree on everything, but what he appreciated and respected is good thought, that we can actually we can agree to disagree, and at the same time have the same end game. So I look forward to doing that. And for those who have not had a chance to meet, we will be giving you a call. We'll be catching up, and I look forward to having conversations and finding out how we can best support whatever you're doing in your state to make our state continue to grow and be better. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have Valley Visioning. Curtis?
Yes, hi, thank you. Thanks for welcoming me in on your meeting this evening. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to do a little bit of an intro, but before that, perhaps if the host could give me screen share rights, I've got some slides that we'll share. But thank you again for having myself, Ryan Beck from Envision Utah. Many of you may know that the Utah Valley Chamber was a year ago at this time, really on its left and right knee, trying to figure out perhaps what its value might be to the Utah County business community. And a dear friend, Rana, had retired and moved on, and Stan Lockhart took the reins at the interim during the summer. it was during that time that I was brought in to assist with the golf tournament. Probably one of the only things that you could do during the COVID summer of 2020 is play golf. And that accepted that opportunity. And it's through that planning event that I became aware of the chamber mission and vision, and was asked to throw my resume in with many other qualified candidates. And on September 15th of last year, they asked me and hired me to run the chamber. And I spent the first 100 days getting to know our neighbors, our friends, those that had been involved in the past, and those that were currently engaged at the chamber. And so as I look across the Zoom room here, there are many of you that I've gotten to know better in the last several months. And that really was the first pivot and first real task that I took on, was to get to know those individuals and those that had relationships with the chamber. And then I've spent the last, I'd say, 2 months figuring out really where our value proposition lies. And came upon, of course, the study that had taken place since 2018, and met Ari and Ryan at Envision Utah, and became keenly aware of the work that had gone before I took this post. Tremendous work, an amazing amount of hours, coordination and collaboration. And I have been finding ways in which we can pivot our chamber mission and vision around the idea of valley visioning. This valley visioning really does kind of give us our North Star as far as growth needs, an understanding of where the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce can contribute, the resources that are available to us, and the kind of feedback that we received from businesses, from residents, and from city government. And I was just absolutely amazed by the amount of feedback and insight that was received through this process. Our strategies, our committees are centered around the results of the survey and the research that was performed by Valley Envision Utah on behalf of Utah County. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It is one perspective that allows us to have insights into ways in which this county can grow and still maintain its principal core values, and all the while engage in meaningful conversations regarding transportation, housing, natural resources. And I think it helped provide for the Utah Valley Chamber a scaffolding, if you will, of what that growth might look like, and how we as a chamber can rally around those initiatives. So I'll just move forward on a screen here and share with you those that have been a part of this dialogue over the last 2+ years. We've engaged all of the chambers from the point of the mountain down to Santaquin, and created a couple of years ago an association of Utah County Chambers. And that gives us strength in unity as we approach tasks such as this. And of course, our partners with our 2 local universities. We leaned on them heavily as we did the research and gathered information about the Valley. Many of you participated on the original steering committees, and were very active in providing dialogue, discourse, input as it relates to Valley visioning. And this is probably the reason why it's so important for us to have a plan, to put together a thought leadership group that allows us to consider ways in which we will grow as our population continues to sky forward in this hockey stick sort of effect, as we need to find a place for 1 million people to live in Utah County by the year 2050. Ryan is with us as well to take us through just a quick summary of the findings of that summary, and then I'll wrap up the last few minutes. Ryan.
All right. Thank you, Curtis. I'm actually going to share my screen here so I can just control my own slides. So, well, thank you all for having us tonight. Like Curtis mentioned, I'm going to be fairly brief. We did talk to you in November, so we know you've heard this. We've touched base with you a bunch of times. So phase one was all about listening, and we started this process back in the fall of 2018 by going out and doing in-person workshops. You know, we did 12 of those workshops across the valley, got people engaged, about 400 people engaged. And we then followed that up with a survey, a countywide survey, where we got about 2,700 people engaged, just all so we could listen to what their hopes and desires and how to maintain this great quality of life that we come to know in Utah County. So on the screen are some examples of some of those workshops. I bet if I looked into that, some of those pictures, I could see some folks in the audience here. But you know, what we heard, this is kind of a tabulation of what we heard, and these are the things exactly that you'd think we'd heard, right? So we heard all about, you know, our water quality and quantity is precious. We need to do an excellent job managing it. Things like transportation, reducing air pollution and our air quality. We want to educate our kids, so we need to improve our education. So all these great jobs that are moving here, so our kids can take those jobs. You know, we heard a lot about housing affordability. We all know what's going on there, but we also heard some other things like, you know, preserving our open space and our agriculture. So we do maintain this great quality of life that we've come to know. So from that listening and all those survey results, and that was just one example of a survey question. We asked many, many more. But we went ahead and put together expert working groups on the topics you see on the screen: housing, transportation, air quality, agriculture, water quality, and workforce. Because, you know, we at Envision Utah or the chamber, we're not the experts, but we did convene the experts to help us out with some of these topic areas. So that was phase one. It was all about listening. Phase two was about scenarios. So we took what we heard in phase one and we put together 5 different scenarios so that people had a chance to weigh in on what they wanted 2050, Utah County in 2050 to look like. So we went out and we again did public workshops all around the valley, got hundreds of people involved with those. And we then followed that up with a survey where we had over 11,000 people weigh in on that survey. So I'm going to just go through one of those questions. There were many, but in the sake of time. So this one, we asked how and where people would like to grow, the public, how and where they'd like to grow. And so we offered 5 different scenario choices. Scenario A was all about current conditions, and we continue the growth patterns, think housing mix, average lot sizes, things like that. From the last 20 years, we projected that out to 2050. So what's interesting about this is in the lighter yellow, you can see the existing development footprint, and then in this darker orange color, you can see the new development. So interesting to compare the footprints of each of these different growth patterns, and think about the impacts this would have on our transportation, or, you know, where we deliver our water to, or things like agriculture, those things that the public said were important to us. All right, so scenario A was all about current conditions. Scenario B was about organized centers, where this growth occurs throughout the region in these mixed-use centers where we have made investments in high-capacity transportation. Scenario C was about westward growth. You know, we have a lot of available land out in the Cedar Valley and towards and Saratoga Springs, going west of the lake. So that focused more growth towards the west. And then scenario D was about southern growth, the other place where there's available land. It's currently a lot of us tied up in agriculture, but we tested that idea of moving the growth southward. And then scenario E, what we heard from the public was, well, why don't we accommodate this growth in our urban areas? You know, fill in the vacant lots and the empty spaces with urban infill. So we offered those to the public. These are the results. I want to mention 2 things. There's 2 different bars here. The blue is the public results, what we heard from the public, those 11,000 people who weighed in. But then we went ahead and hired Lighthouse to help us verify these results by doing a random sample survey for backup. So what we heard here is a lot of support for scenario B. That was the center style growth. We also heard a lot for westward growth, a lot of support for, towards Saratoga and Eagle Mountain. And then we saw a lot of infill, a lot of demand for infill. Not quite as much for scenario A. And remember, that was how we've grown the last 20 years projected forward. And then not quite as much for scenario D for southern growth. And what we really heard when we dug into this was that people really like that open space and agriculture land, and they'd like to maintain some of the qualities that brings. So we took all those survey results and we went out and we met with city staff and vetted what we heard with city staff, and we talked to city councils. I'm sure you've seen me before at your city council. And with that, I'm going to bounce back to Curtis, and he is going to go through talk about the vision that we put together, the 2050 vision. So Curtis, back to you.
Thank you for that. As a result of those surveys and dialogue, again, we put together a PDF. It's a 27-page summary of the report. It's a report we'd like to make available to each of you on the call, and we'll do so afterwards. And herein you can find the strategic plan for how the Chamber hopes to continue the dialogue and engage meaningful conversations about the findings of this survey and how they might correlate with the future growth of the Valley. We know that it's up to each city on how implementation of our growth will take place. We hope that this can be a tool for you as you consider ways in which the Valley will grow, while still adhering to some of the precious resources that we have, and not pivoting away from the values that even Congressman Owen spoke about, the principles, I would say, principles of prosperity. One ask, and then perhaps one invitation. Our ask is that we would hope that this would complement the work that you're doing at the city level, that you might take it under strong consideration as you look at ways in which you plan and coordinate future growth of the Valley. The invitation is that our hope is that we would have an endorsement made that allows us to strongly back our conversations with others that we'll be inviting into the Chamber to participate in these dialogues and these narratives. Specifically, we have, as part of our Chamber leadership, a board of directors who we've asked to serve as committee representatives to take on the 6 key items of feedback that we received a result of the survey: education, workforce, natural resources, health systems, housing, infrastructure, transportation, healthcare. These are key areas that we have found that the survey and the other research that was completed by the Kempsey Gardner Institute in partnership with Envision Utah said that these are the areas of focus for our residents and our businesses, that we should get behind these initiatives. Our legislative session that we just concluded really took on a new life of its own for the Utah Valley Chamber because of the work that had been completed by these chairs and vice chairs. And in fact, we're ramping back up our committee work with each of these members and other committee members. Each committee has up to 12 committee members that assist us with legislative issues, conversations. We welcome and invite others from our community to participate on these boards and present their ideas and many of their experiences as it relates to each of these topics. And then finally, just wanted to, thank you all for your participation that led us to this point. As we look at 2021 and beyond, and especially as we take the next 6 months and prepare for the next legislative session, we hope that our paths will cross more frequently and more meaningfully as we consider the future growth for the Valley and the Chamber of Commerce's role in seeing that we do that in a way that makes sense for our communities, our businesses, and our residents. And so with that, we turn the time back to the floor. And again, we appreciate so very much you allowing us a few minutes on your meeting today.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to come share that with us.
You
Okay.
bet.
We'll move on. We have the Utah County contract for elections and cost increase discussion.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if that works out. Let's bring up this one right here. Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to, there we go. Okay. My name is Amelia Powers Gardner. I'm the Utah County Clerk Auditor. I also have Josh Daniels on the line, my Chief Deputy, and he helps us run the elections and all things here at the county. So we're both here to answer questions, but I wanted to run through some specifics with you really quickly. First is I want you guys to, well, actually I'm just going to back up a little bit. As we go through, before I jump into the nitty gritty of it, just a little background on me. I'm an engineer by training. And so I tend to just jump right into the weeds and into details. So if you guys have questions or you need me to back up, absolutely jump in and do that. As we go into this, I'm coming into this well aware that people are questioning why the costs are the way they are. And as we go through and do that, I just want you to think about how elections were in Utah County in 2017 and 2018. And let's compare that to how elections have been in Utah County in 2019 and 2020. So keep that in mind. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the statutory considerations. And keep in mind that these are straight out of Utah law, that all municipal elections must be conducted primarily by mail. And that means that cities and counties are required to mail a ballot to every active registered voter in your city. And contracting with the county through an interlocal agreement, the city recorder is still the election officer, and they have the ability to contract with the city, and fees cannot exceed actual costs, including equipment, supplies, and reasonable and necessary administrative costs. So as we go through, these are the code sections of Utah law that we can look at those. But if you'll look, the municipality in which the election is held shall pay the cost of conducting the election. And it says what that can mean. The costs assessed by the county clerk to a municipality under this section may not exceed the actual costs incurred by the county clerk. So Utah County, prior to my coming into office, was not following this law. When I came in 2019, one of the things that was really difficult for us as we tried to come up with the interlocal agreement for the cities was the fact that there were no records kept in 2017 for how much running a city election costs. So when we were developing the ILA for 2019, we had nowhere to start from because we had no records of how much it costs in 2017. And so we guessed. We came up with our best guesstimate that we could in 2019, and we created an ILA. And what we found is that we had severely underestimated the costs of that. But because we had signed an ILA, we stuck to the ILA, in essence, not following state law. But we did track costs in 2019, and we were able to come up with a base for 2020. So I want you to know that our fee for this year is a cap, and it's based off of the actual costs in 2019. And whatever we charge will not exceed those costs. But what we sent you is a cap. And so it could actually be less. So I kind of went through this. In 2019, we inherited an office that just months earlier had been called the epicenter of dysfunction by Governor Herbert. And we didn't have it was very haphazard. The office was haphazard. We didn't have access to a lot of that information. The actual cost to run your election in 2019 was over $2.20 per active registered voter. It was right around $2.23. That's really not very surprising at all. In Salt Lake County, they charge $2.50 per active registered voter. And so $2.23 were not nearly as extravagant as Salt Lake County, but it was still more in line with what it would actually cost. So in 2021, we're guaranteeing that we won't charge more than $2.25 per voter per election. We feel that this is actually, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. If you look at the way that Utah County has handled elections in the past, and you look at how well we have handled the last 2 elections, we feel that Utah County gives you a lot of bang for your buck. So what do you get with that? You have proven results. We are implementing as many cost efficiencies as we can. We do voter outreach. We have cutting edge technology, and we have award-winning reporting. Our reporting mechanisms have been, actually they've literally won national awards. And you get all of that at a cost that is significantly less than Salt Lake County pays. So what do the costs cover? The costs cover all of the costs associated with printing and mailing the ballots, staffing and equipment for voting centers, recruiting, training, and hiring the poll workers, collection of ballots from the post office and the drop boxes, processing returned ballots, scanning and tabulating those ballots, signature verification, and preparing the city for the canvass report. This is, I'm going to emphasize again, this is a won't exceed bid, but it is possible that it will be less because you're going to receive credit for every ballot that gets dropped in a drop box rather than being mailed. And in 2020, we saw utilization of those drop boxes increase significantly. The cost breakdown for you, so you know exactly where that is. The estimated cost per active voter, this includes ballot printing and mailing, which is about $1.50 per voter. Keep in mind, credit will be given for any for ballots that are put in drop boxes. Equipment and supplies is about 10 cents a voter. Administration and support is about 19 cents a voter, and labor of about 46 cents per voter. Now, there's a couple of things that can actually make that cost less. So that's the cap. Some things that will possibly make that less. The cities will be credited for people who use ballot drop boxes. I've mentioned that several times. Any of the cities that use ranked choice voting will only have 1 election instead of 2, unless they choose to use ranked choice voting in a primary. But most cities, the only city that I've heard of that's considering that is Lehigh, but all the other cities will eliminate a primary, which means that they'll only have to house 1 election. If the county is able to secure state funding for the equipment, we will pass that on to you. So right now we're working with the state, and there may be some grants available to cover equipment and supply costs. If we do receive a grant for equipment and supply costs, we will pass that cost savings on to the cities. And the other thing is we have significantly more registered voters now than we did in 2019. And so we can take advantage of some economies of scale. That's going to work for most cities. It's not probably going to work too well for Tom out there in Eagle Mountain because you increased your voters significantly. So your election is going to cost more because you have a lot more voters. But for everybody else, they're going to take advantage of our economies of scale because you have more voters. So sorry, Tom. Everyone else, you can thank Tom for having a significantly growing city and having more voters so that we can get an economy of scale. So these are some of the things that can save us money. Beyond that, I work, coming from manufacturing, I work with my staff to try to bring efficiencies into every step of the process. Now, we based this estimate of a cap of $2.25 based off of our actuals in 2019. But I think that we have implemented a lot of efficiencies since 2019. For example, in 2019, we processed significantly less ballots than we did in 2020. And I think we did a better job in 2020 because every election we're working to make this process better. And any of those savings we've found will be passed on. just like state statute says, we will pass on the actual costs to you, nothing more. So in order to execute the successful municipal elections, the cities will be responsible for candidate filing, financial disclosures, public notices, ballot language, and any election or candidate education. For comparison, Highland actually went out and bid on what it would cost them to run their own election using a vote by mail election, which is now required by state law. And they found that it was about 38% more expensive for them to run their own election than it was to contract with our office. You can see those costs broken down here. If the city chooses to run their own election, they will have full ownership of the entire process. That includes ballot envelope design, printing, ordering, mailing, etc. The other thing, if a city chooses to run their own election, they just to be aware of some potential challenges would be voter confusion, thinking that they can show up at one of our ballot centers and vote on election day and we won't have access to your ballots. Also, we would need to coordinate ballot drop boxes. I know a lot of people like to drop their ballots at the drop box on their way to work, and that may or may not be in their own city. We would work with you on exchanging ballots that may be ballots from another city that got dropped in your drop box, but it would cause some confusion. Signature verification and tabulation. We do have tabulation machines, but as far as verification goes, the state actually owns the database that has the signatures. And under state law, we're not allowed to share those signatures outside of our office. So in order to verify signatures on ballots, your staff would have to actually be sitting in our office with one of our employees to go through that process. That's a potential delay in election results. And if you have any referendums on your ballot, there's also some extra duties that go along with that. So in conclusion, we as a county have done a lot of work to upgrade our systems and update our systems. Running a good, secure, quality election, it's a little more expensive than running a haphazard, chaotic epicenter of dysfunction election. But as an election official, I think that that's worth it. I think that safety and security and confidence in our elections is definitely worth that. And I think that Utah County gives you a really good bang for your buck. We still are significantly cheaper than Salt Lake County, and we're working to make that even cheaper. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
So I have a comment, Amelia. I just want to thank you. This is Mayor Brunst for your good work and bringing some sense and some streamlining to a very chaotic process that we've had for many years. So I appreciate what you've done and what you're doing.
You know, Mayor Brunst, I appreciate that. We have worked really hard. My staff has come a long way and I'm very proud of them. And thank you for recognizing our efforts. I appreciate that.
And this is Mayor Anderson from Cedar Hills. Our council already talked about this and we all agreed with what you said. There's no way we could run a municipal election for the cost that the county can do it for us and as efficiently as the county could do. So we were all in favor of having the county do our next municipal election. It just makes so much sense. So thank you for your hard work and making it so attractive for us.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Anderson.
So Amelia, this is Mayor Johnson calling. I'm just going to take a moment. And since you correctly seem to identify that we're the only city who seems to still want to have a primary, and I don't know why. So I've had a number of conversations with my council members. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind emailing me the list of those cities who are going to participate in RCV this year.
Yeah. I'll send you a list and it will have those that have already opted in and those that are still considering, because people do have until May 15th to decide. So there's still some people that are deciding.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Could you mail that out to all the mayors?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we could share with our councils because they have a lot of questions and your PowerPoint would be great. That'd answer the things questions we had Tuesday evening when we were discussing that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I just emailed it minutes before this meeting, so you probably haven't seen it yet. But we did just email out a memo from my office that includes all of this information, but in memo form. But we'll make sure that you get access to the presentation as well. So you'll have, so 3 things that we, number 1, you have the memo. We'll make sure that you have the PowerPoint, and I will also send out an email that recaps who is doing ranked choice voting, who's considering it. And then of course, I would be remiss if I didn't put in my 2 cents on ranked choice voting in that email. So you'll get that too. It's not a surprise. I am a fan of ranked choice voting, particularly for municipal elections. I'm sure you've heard the ranked choice voting Utah tagline, better, faster, cheaper. I actually coined that phrase in a speech I gave. And I do think that ranked choice voting for municipalities is better, faster, cheaper, because we can do everything in one election for you. It costs less money. It's less effort for the city. And your citizens are able to have less campaign signs spread throughout their city for amount of time. And the candidates tend to be nicer to each other. I'm a big fan of that. I think that clean politics is good politics. Does anybody have any other questions for us? Josh, do you have anything to add? I don't know if you guys know Josh. Hopefully he'll unmute himself. He's my chief deputy and he is fantastic. He started with me on day 1, and every piece of my vision he has been integral in implementing.
Yeah, no, thank you. Not a lot to add. Amelia covered it all. I did in the chat. I posted links if you want to download that memo Amelia talked about, or the slides. That's posted in the chat. Ranked choice voting does present a really good opportunity for cities. There's about 5 or 6 that are pretty close to deciding. You know, some of them have already made their decision. One other interesting thing that's an opportunity some of you might be aware of, you know, Vineyard's been very interested in using this, is voters that have any kind of challenge, disability, you know, really any kind of problem, there is an option for them to contact the county and opt in for essentially a digital ballot delivery. So, you know, that's also a cost savings because a ballot doesn't have to be sent back via mail, but a voter could use a secure app on their phone. They can mark their ballot digitally, essentially send that back to the county. We then produce a paper ballot copy of that gets archived and scanned and is part of the results. But it's just a streamlined and digital way for voters to return their ballot rather than having to use a Dropbox or the mailbox. And that's available to voters who opt in through our form on our website.
And we do try on every piece of publication that we put out, we try to let people know that there are options for people with disabilities. So one thing that I would encourage any city in any of your communications to do that as well. That's one thing that I'm fairly passionate about. My mother is vision impaired and has some disabilities. And so I want to make sure that all of our citizens have a way to vote that works for them.
Perfect. Thank you for taking the time to come and answer when Mayor Mann and I reached out to have you come explain that for all of us, because I think all of us are dealing with the same thing in our councils, just questions and asking what's going on. So I really appreciate the slide deck and the chance to use that in our council meetings. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I mean, I understand you guys are in a tough position because, you know, costs change, but we're doing the best we can. And in the future, it'll be much better because now that we've established a baseline and we can establish these costs, we'll have a better idea moving forward, and there should be less changes.
Thank you. Okay, other business, our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for May 1st, 2021. If there's no other business, we'll adjourn the meeting now.
I don't think it can be May 1st, that's Saturday. I think they meant the 6th.
Thank you for the catch, May 6th. Okay, thank you very